In this video, I'm going to tell you about the things that I'd like to see coming out of Games Workshop in the upcoming 2019. So at the beginning of 2017, I did a video about things that I'd like to see coming out from Games Workshop in the future. And as it has been pointed out to me as the years have gone by, multiple times in the comments, a lot of the things that I asked for, I got. And if you haven't been able to chance, if you want to check for yourself, Pachow, you can see the video there. And there's a bunch of things in there that I said, this is what I want. And I want to reiterate, I did not have any kind of like inside track on whether these things were going to get done or not. But there was a bunch of things I said, I want this and I want this and I want this, and a bunch of them came true. Some people have accused me of being psychic, and I'm not psychic. I'm just going to put that out here right now. As far as you know, Michael, somewhere there's someone named Michael who's like, what, who? And that's kind of funny to me. But anyway, in no specific order, I'm now going to try to go through and talk about the things that I would like to see coming from Games Workshop in the upcoming 2019, maybe 2020. It's been almost 2 years since I did the last video, so maybe we'll do them every 2 years. We'll see how it goes. If you've been watching the channel this year, you know I'm a big fan of Kill Team. I like Kill Team quite a bit. If you've been watching for longer than that, you also know that I also enjoy Age of Sigmar as well. I was a big fan of it when it first came out, and I have continued to be a fan of it. I would like to see kind of a mixture of the two. I would like to see a Kill Team version of Age of Sigmar. Now, I'm not saying Mordheim. But I'm not saying Mordheim. You know what I mean? Like, Mordheim is very specific to the old world of Warhammer Fantasy and not the 1,000 years later that is Age of Sigmar. So I don't know that it would be Mordheim. I'm sure there'd be benefits to them saying, hey, look, we're making a new Mordheim. But there would also be a lot of people who would say, yeah, but you're doing it in Age of Sigmar, and that's morally wrong, and I'm going to boycott or whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff, as opposed to just being like, well, I don't like it, so I'm not going to buy it. But nonetheless, I want to see a game that is based in the Age of Sigmar world with the Age of Sigmar models, but has a very Mordheim-y, maybe kind of more, you know, Kill Team-ish kind of feel to it, where you've got small skirmishy teams and they're doing a thing and objectives and this kind of stuff and that kind of stuff. I know there's Age of Sigmar skirmish, but I want something a little bit more, something that's got some more campaign feel to it and some sort of growth and things like that. I think it could really take off and do really well for the people who like the idea of Kill Team, but are not necessarily sci-fi people. Some people, honestly, have come over from Age of Sigmar because they've always wanted to get into the sci-fi portion but didn't want to buy a whole army, which I've talked about a whole bunch, and that's given them the situation. And in this situation, it could also work the other direction. The people who are more the sci-fi 40K people, but we're kind of interested in playing some Age of Sigmar, would be given that chance to do so. That's one of the things I'd like to see. Speaking of Kill Team, I'd also like to see some Inquisition rules for Kill Team. I would like to see either, maybe they make a box set with new models that are Inquisition based. Maybe they make kind of like, you know, Rogue Trader, but with just basically a bunch of cool new models and some instructions. And, you know, maybe, I don't know if you need another actual like Kill Team area or whatever they call those boards, and the little terrain. I don't know if you need that, but I would like some new models and some terrain for it, or just come up with a book and say, use the models that, you know, if you can find them on eBay. I've got a whole bunch of old Inquisition models, so I'm cool, but not everybody else necessarily has as much of a hoarder as I am, so you may not have those models. Having new cool Inquisition models with new rules and stuff like that to play in Kill Team, I think would be really cool. And it could kind of tie in with, say, Sisters of Battle. It would make sense, because I will guarantee you that they will make Kill Team rules for Sisters of Battle when Sisters come out in 2019. Relating back to this previous Pachow, when I talked about the video I did in 2017, this still kind of hasn't been fixed, and I would like a better paint pot design, please. I'm not saying it has to be dropper bottles, don't get me wrong. I understand that that's probably not a thing that Games Workshop wants to do. I would just like bottles that seal better. I kind of talked in the last one about how I would like bottles that don't tip over as easily. That's not necessarily, you know, particularly a thing, but they did actually make these kind of little weird paint racks for hanging stuff on the wall, but you can also just lay them down on your table, and then it's unlikely that your paint pots will get tipped over unless something really drastic happens. That's fine, but what I would like it is if my paint pots didn't get all kinds of paint gunk all the way around the ridges, if they didn't dry out very easily, and that kind of stuff. I think that would be super important, and a paint pot redesign would be something that I would still, in 2019, really look forward to. Related to this, Games Workshop makes a line of airbrush paints, but their airbrush paints don't come in dropper bottles like nearly every other company in the entire world. They still come in the normal paint pots that all the rest of the Games Workshop paints come in. Now, I'm a big fan of the paint pots for washes because I like being able to dip my brush in there and go to town. Washes in a squeeze bottle, for me, it's an extra step because now I have to then put it on something and then dip my brush in there. So I like the wash. I like washes being in a bottle like that, or being in a pot like that. Airbrush paints in a pot just doesn't make a lick of sense. So if they're not going to change the pots, then what I would like would be if they produced some tiny little piece of plastic that you snap to the pot that made it easier to pour, because I can't tell you how many times I've tried using the airbrush paints and just dribbled it down the side of the pot. So if there was a little kind of a spigoty thing, kind of like if you're using the more old style house paint, still in the metal cans, they make like a little rubber thingy that you can snap on there that makes it easier to pour so it doesn't just leak all over the place. Something like that, but really tiny. And if Games Workshop's not going to do it, maybe some other smart head out there might try their hand at that sort of manufacturing. I would absolutely like to see some new Imperial Guard models. The Cadians are cool, sure, but Cadia has fallen. I would like to see some new sort of standard plastic Imperial Guard Astra Militarum models. Obviously, they probably can't make plastic Talarn and plastic Vestroians and plastic Steel Legion and all the different types of permutations, Praetorians, whatever, of Imperial Guard. But the standard models, the standard regular Cadian folks with the las guns and the whole deal, they need a new set of stuff. I mean, the Scions are cool, don't get me wrong, but just the regular people, they kind of need to be updated and have something kind of more, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more, not necessarily just pushed together, they only go to one way, but just a new set of sculpts. Also, our friends in Chaos. The Chaos Space Marine and even the Khorne Berserkers are very, 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 that vehicle was also angry, very old sculpts and look kind of goofy, especially when you've got a normal Chaos Space Marine and he's standing next to, a Death Guard, one of the new Death Guard from like the Dark Imperium. It's TAC Marines versus Primaris almost at that point. So with the, talk of new stuff going into, the Vigilus kind of book and all that stuff, talking about Black Legion and all that jazz, I'd like to see at the very least some Chaos Space Marines. And, the Berserkers are really great right now in 8th edition, so some new models for that would be great as well. Oh, and a new Abaddon sculpt. I mean, seriously, come on, a new Abaddon sculpt. Please. I would like to see a smartphone app for 40K. There's a pretty good smartphone app for Age of Sigmar. Now, admittedly, with Age of Sigmar, the big benefit is that you can use the smartphone app to see all the free war scrolls, and you don't have that with 40K. You need to buy the Codex books to be able to see the data sheets, and I get that. But some sort of like army builder would be great. Now, Games Workshop has done some army builder stuff in the past. They just did kind of a roster thing for, it's not an app, it's a web-based thing, but it's for Kill Team. And that's cool, but the problem is at the end, when you get your PDF, it is just a list of the guys that you've got in your group, and it doesn't have any of their stats. So if you're like, okay, this guy, he's my murder clown. I don't really understand Harlequins that well, but he's my murder clown, and someone wants to know how many wounds the murder clown has. I'd have to go look it in the book because it's not on the sheet. Other companies that make apps or programs or whatever for that type of thing, for list building, they will print out all the stuff you need on one sheet, so it's right there and it makes things so much easier for you or whatever. But the fact that we don't have anything quite like that at all for 40K at this day and age, about to be 2019, is it's a little weird. And I think that it would really help people be able to play a little bit easier, people would be able to get into the hobby a little bit easier because it would kind of, I don't want to say hold their hand, but it would make a little bit more sense to some of those people who are getting into it versus having to write longhand all their information down and try to figure out all the stats and the wounds and the toughness and all that jazz. It'd just be easier. So a good app, kind of like the Age of Sigmar app, but for 40K, that would be great. These last two are maybe a little goofy, and they're not directly related to Games Workshop, but kind of. They would have to be involved. I would like to see a real decent Hollywood-style movie based off of, let's say, 40K. Like good special effects. You know, it could be completely animated. If you've ever seen the original intro video to the old real-time strategy game, Dawn of War, I would watch that for 90 minutes. They made that 90 minutes long, even with 2000, 2001 technology or whatever, when that game first came out, I would watch that 90 minutes. Sure, sign me up, I'll be there. But even if they didn't do it that way, if they did like regular human actors and then also CG, you know, dreadnoughts and Eldar and junk like that, or whatever, kind of like the World of Warcraft movie. There were like people, but then also not people in it. Something like that, working with a company to make a Hollywood movie, kind of big time, bringing people in, teaching people about the game, you know, all that kind of stuff. That's something that I would love to see. Getting Hollywood to buy off is obviously something that would be difficult maybe for Games Workshop, though they've been doing quite well. They've been spreading out through all kinds of apps and games and things like that. And that's cool. People are hearing about it more and more. Maybe that would be an easier sell in this day and age for the Hollywood market. But that's what I want to see, is like a cool Hollywood movie. Maybe it becomes a trilogy or whatever, I don't know. But at least something that really shows off the 41st millennium and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of depth there, and I think it could be really something cool. Speaking of like app games and all that kind of jazz, this is the second part of that. I would also like to see a really nice like AAA kind of, or at least AA sort of video game title again. I was a big fan of the Space Marine game. Played it on my Xbox 360, but it also came out for PC and maybe PS3, I'm not sure. It was a great game, kind of a third person, running around as a Space Marine, smacking the heck out of orcs and all that kind of stuff. It was awesome. I would like to see a new game that would maybe be a little bit more like a bigger battle game, like a Battlefield, you know, 5 or something like that, where you've got maybe some vehicles and some troops. Honestly, I'd like to see it all Imperial Guard, and every once in a while when you respawn in, maybe you get to spawn in as a single, you know, Chaos Marine or regular Marine, depending on which side you're playing on. And then maybe there's like some Predator tanks or something like that you could do. I think that'd be a lot of fun, and it could be astounding looking, but you need, I've heard of Eternal Crusade. I've seen a bunch of footage of it on YouTube. It's a kind of third-person shooter 40K game. I want something made by a really good studio that really has their chops and has a bunch of money behind it. I'd like to see something like that. So that's pretty much all I really want. It's not a lot, really. We'll see how psychic I am again, maybe in a couple of years or whenever, and see how this stuff works out. If you've got some things that you're looking for from Games Workshop in the coming 2019, why don't you put those down in the comments below. Again, I don't particularly believe that they actually read these things. Some people were like, wow, they really read that last one. I'm like, I don't actually know that they do. And by read, I mean watched, but maybe read the comments as well. I don't know that this is actually going to get back to them, and maybe some of this stuff is just low-hanging fruit that's pretty obvious to a lot of other people that it's just going to happen, but I still want it anyway, so I put it in this video. So we'll take a look and see how it comes in 2019 and see what kind of new stuff the Games Workshop comes out and whether I'm psychic or not. Or am I?